Hi, welcome to Sips and Stories with Anjali, a place where we don't just talk about work, we decode the human experience behind it. Today, we unpack the hidden architecture behind psychosocial safety, where psychology, leadership, risk governance all interact. And I can't think of a better guest than Alex Drane. I'm very delighted to introduce you to Sips and Stories with Anjali. Alex, Director of Trident Psychology. Alex is an endorsed organizational psychologist with specialization in psychosocial governance and psychologically safe work systems. His approach is prevention-based and system-based and spanning control across risk identification, work design, investigations, and practical implementation. Over to you, Alex, to talk about yourself and also give us a lens into your areas of expertise and what's driving your work into this space.
Thanks, Anjali. Happy to be here. Yeah, it was an interesting journey. You know, when you start studying psychology, you don't expect to end up in a risk space, right?
Absolutely.
That's not
the space where everyone wants to get into.
That's not the journey that
Yeah.
you think you're going to go on when you start studying psychology. So
Yeah.
I think what really appealed to me about the space was the idea of being able to prevent harm before it happens.
Absolutely.
And sort of pull people out of the river, and not just drop them back in further up and have them come downstream and need to pull them out again.
Absolutely.
Was
Yeah.
what really appealed to me. So my experiences in the psychosocial risk space, that wellbeing strategy and governance.
That's right.
Facilitation, assessment, and coaching now as well. So
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating, Alex, and that sets us so beautifully for the conversation ahead. Because, I think our audience would love to know so much about psychosocial risk governance. We've heard so much about psychosocial safety and, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's, boardroom conversations or policy, which I, to be honest, think that doesn't, get the attention that it deserves. But I think it's so good to talk today about psychosocial risk governance and how we can build or evolve safe workplaces. So I think wonderful. And let's get into our first sort of question.
Let's do it.
Most of the organizations, Alex, they really want to focus on psychosocial safety. However, I believe that there is a lot of struggle in terms of really understanding what's their risk profile. As much as the leaders really want to sort of get that clarity,
Yes.
I feel, based on my experience, and you can definitely usher more light on that, they really struggle to get that clarity. So what, according to you, is a better way to understand the risk profile and what the leaders should sort of focus upon?
Yeah, it's a tricky one at the moment. I think we're in a real dynamic place in terms of the maturity for psychosocial risk at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where we're starting to see organizations and leaders know what they don't know, and that's an uncomfortable place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to better understanding the risk profile, I think going back to basics, right? Like we need to understand, identify the hazards in the workplace, and we need to assess the risk of those hazards. And we do that through understanding the severity, frequency, and duration of exposure.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done. I think looking at some sort of consultation with the workforce to understand that is critical.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at whether or not it's surveys or focus groups or something to that effect, and using the information from that to then feed into that risk profile. Okay, from what we're asking our workforce,
absolutely.
What does that look like?
That's right.
Are people doing okay or not? What's our response? Evaluating our controls as well as part of that, because if we if we don't know if our controls are working and what controls we have in place and the efficacy of our whole risk system,
Yeah.
then that greatly impacts our risk profile.
And it's so important, right? But do you think, Alex, just further asking you a question on that, do you think it's probably a data sort of a decision, or a better listening, or where is this sort of, what would you say about that? Because I feel that, that there is enough data or enough data, dashboards in place. But what's your experience been? Is it more of a decision making sort of or accountability sort of an issue? Where is the...
I'm reluctant to say any organizations, especially large organizations, need another dashboard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's they already have so
yeah,
many.
that's right. Power BI is doing well.
Yeah.
You don't need another dashboard in there. But some of it, I think, is around the quality of that data. So when it comes to understanding if we're having events in the organization and what we do about that, we have to say, okay, well, do we feel like the information we have in front of us is an accurate reflection of what's happening?
Right.
And in many cases, I think that's a gap for organizations. So I know from a injury management or a health perspective, a lot of large organizations in Australia will follow the OSHA guidelines, which is the North American standard around categorization of events in the workplace, and insurers will sort of follow that model or an equivalent model.
That's right.
And when you look at that you kind of see now a disconnect between what workplaces are expected to do in Australia and that categorization outline.
Yeah.
So suddenly it's like, well, hang on, like some of these cases might be work related.
Absolutely.
And we're not saying they're work related because it doesn't fit in the same, the same landscape as the OSHA guidelines. So already there we've got a disconnect. And that means what our senior leaders, what boards, what executives are getting from a data point of view is skewed, because we're seeing a lot of cases that are being put as non-work related when in reality they are work related. That's just one example of how the quality of the information that our senior leaders are getting is not
what really would drive the decisions, the right decisions in the and would have an impact. And you spoke about consultation process, and it's so important, right? Especially for the leaders. But given the pace and given the scale of work, sometimes it doesn't really is at the level it should be. What do you think, especially from a change management professional perspective, what role can they play in making sure that it's part of the strategy right from the start and it's delivered appropriately throughout the process? It doesn't have an afterthought of sort of an impact where you're cleaning the mess, basically.
Yeah, I certainly see that, right? You're coming in at the very back end and through consultation once all the decisions have been made.
That's when you get into that mess and you're like figuring out now what to do. And it loses its impact, because that's what we are talking about. It's all about the human experience. It's all about people first sort of an approach. So how do we make sure, and especially from a leadership lens perspective, that those consultations transpire into, number one, into an impact, and number two, the role of change management professionals?
Change has such a profound impact on our health in the workplace. When change is done poorly, we've all been there, right? Like it sucks. It sucks. It doesn't feel good.
No.
You don't know what's going on. You're not sure if your job's secure. You don't know how to provide value. You don't know what's meaningful. So already we're identifying the fact that big change is a potential psychosocial hazard. Now, when it comes to control for that, I sort of say that, well, effective change management is all the processes and systems that we would normally have for effective change management, I should say, is a great control. So when it comes to, the efficacy of that control, what we're doing, we look at consultation with the workforce, and we want to understand what's going on, and we want to feed that into real decision making. We don't want to come in at the end once every decision has been made and say, well, we're going to run all this by you, and we're consulting with you, but we're not really prepared to change anything that we're doing. Right?
Yeah.
That's not meaningful consultation in my mind. And I see that all too often.
Yeah.
It's consultation, and we're involving you in the workplace. Asterisks. Not really.
Not really.
Not really, because you're not prepared
yeah.
to change anything.
Yeah. It's just a tick that we have to do, and you're just doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not effective.
Yeah.
So that's something that I see all too often, and I think from a change point of view is something we could really be better at. We could do a really good job at managing the risk associated with change by involving people in a way where actually we change some of the decisions based on the feedback that we get. To your point around how quick workplaces change and how to involve, how to have that consultation going. I think if we've got a system where the consultation is, where we consult with our workplace all the time.
Yeah.
It's not like, we're going to run a series of focus groups necessarily for this thing.
That's right.
So if we're dynamic about the way that we consult, then it becomes much easier whether or not you've got a change process going on, whether or not there's external pressures on the business. You could pick a category, right? Geopolitics or whatever it might be. Okay, we consult with our workforce regularly, all the time. So we're in a position
even before the project starts, right? In terms of readiness, in terms of what's going to be the impact on people, processes, technology, and everything.
Yeah.
So definitely it plays a significant part, as you rightly said, Alex. Right from when the strategy is getting discussed at the boardroom level, that's where it should be incorporated and embodied.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And based on your experience, you've worked across industries, even in the military and the aviation sector. What do you think that would be one of the sort of best practices that corporate Australia could just adopt?
I think it's around the investigation response process. What are we doing when something goes wrong? And what I mean by that is not how do we discipline someone, or how do we assign blame. It's how do we take some learnings out of an event and apply those. How do we share those? How do we leverage from other people's failures? I say quote unquote failures, and then integrate those learnings into our business.
Sure.
I find heavy industry in general are probably more mature when it comes to physical safety, and they've got systems in place to manage the physical safety profile of their business.
Yeah.
And that's kind of given them a leg up, if you like, around the psychological health
because it's
management.
so safe on the physical side of things.
They're used to having toolbox talks or briefings around health and safety or environment, sort of environmental factors, and so being able to leverage the existing systems and governance structure is very handy for those organisations.
Yeah.
Now, when I think of corporate Australia more broadly, when we say risk, a lot of organisations think financial risk as a default. That's the way
the way it's always been perceived.
Which is different. And I think even structurally that's quite different.
Yeah.
So that's probably a space where corporate Australia, if you like, could could leverage off the experience of, certain heavy industries such as mining or resources or construction, and think, okay, well, how do they approach risk? What's their go-to?
Yeah.
And is it the same dialogue or the same language that we use? Because I don't think it is. Not yet.
Not yet. No.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's really valuable sort of an insight. And just on a lighter note, if organizations were to have a risk personality, what do you think would it be?
Oh, that's that's a big question.
I mean, if you're comfortable answering that.
Yeah.
Because you've worked with organizations across sectors. So what would that risk personality be if they were to have one?
I think most organizations are risk reluctant. If I was to, or avoidant, perhaps that's a better way of putting it. I think an avoidance style where a lot of organizations don't want to know, and they think that by not knowing, we're in a better position. So we're not going to ask the question because the answer might scare us. And what I would say to that is, well, whatever the state of your organization or your business, not knowing, that's just where you are now.
That's where you are, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
absolutely. And that, probably positions us at an even bigger risk by not even getting into that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of apprehension around if we ask our organization and we get an answer that perhaps we expect, but also we don't want, we have to do something about it immediately. And if I reflect on the risk process more broadly, if you go through and properly consult and understand the severity, duration, frequency of, exposure to your psychosocial hazards, you don't have to do everything at once.
Yeah.
And what I would say is, it's up to the board or senior leaderships or executive to either accept or not the risk appetite for a business.
Absolutely.
And okay, hang on, like, yeah, we found out stuff that we don't like and it makes us feel ick, but are we okay with that or not? That's up for senior leaders to decide.
Yeah.
And some of it you might be okay with, and that's a really uncomfortable place to be. It's more honest, I think, in some ways, because you're looking and you're saying, actually, we're going to accept it, rather than saying we're not going to look and we're going to pretend it doesn't exist.
It doesn't. Yeah.
So have a look. pull the rug up and say, oh, okay, well, maybe these are some of the problems that we have going on. We might look at some of it, and some of it we're just going to accept.
Yeah.
I think that's a better place to be than not looking.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think let's zoom out and probably get into our segment 2, which is around the evolving workplaces that we have today, given AI, hybrid workplace, technology changing every second of the day, and also ever-changing operating models. What do you think, Alex, based on your experience, the leaders should be focusing upon in terms of building safe workplaces, given the ever-changing landscape and the dynamic landscape?
Yeah, it's you're right. Like, it's changing so quickly, isn't it? And I think what we're going to see is poor risk systems exposed and good risk systems stand up. And what I mean by that is, where we've got good consultation, we're understanding our risk profile, we understand the causal pathways to harm within our organization, we're well equipped for change.
Okay.
Because there will be evolving new hazards or a change in our risk profile. And for organizations that go in and just decide to do perhaps a one and done process, they're gonna be wanting, because suddenly it's like, well, we did a psychosocial risk assessment 12 months ago, and we found X, Y, and Z. well, that's a different business now. We're different to what we were at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now we're using different technology, or operating model has changed. And
Are there any smart work sort of, I remember we having a conversation around smart work model. Do you think would that be sort of helpful to talk about given the AI landscape?
I am a big fan of the smart work design model. That's been really sort of pioneered by the Future of Work Institute, which is a Curtin University kind of a affiliate body, really shaping the way that the creation of work, or the design of work, to minimize the impact of harm, but also make workplaces more productive and engaging.
That's right.
I think a workplace that's looking to navigate some of the change, if you're sticking to the principles of that smart work design, then again, you're in a good place. So, I'm talking about making sure that work is stimulating, and that we have sort of mastery or agency, and autonomy, tolerable demands. Work is relational and social. If we're sticking to that, then irrespective of the ever changing landscape, we're in a good place.
We're in a good place.
And there's great research coming out all over the world around the positive impact of is either smart, whether or not it's directly that smart model, or some kind of proxy for it, which is really exciting to see.
Alex, I also have a question further on that around AI and technology around it changing every day. So what are the controls, and could you also talk about any sort of case study or any example that you may have around governance or technology control?
Definitely. When we say AI and change and transformation, we're always talking about either the cost or the risk, or what could go wrong, and how it's negatively impacting our workplace. But I think there's a lot of opportunity using some of that technology, or whether or not it's AI, or something to that effect around. We've got this system or process that could be really good at asking us the right questions around our control design, and the sort of challenge our risk system, and using AI in that form. I think could be really powerful. We're not seeing that a lot yet. I think organizations are always a little bit trigger shy to.
Do you think we've already sort of missed the bus around it? Because there's so much. There are a lot of conversations around governance, around data privacy, and all of that.
Yes.
But what's actually happening on the ground around that, especially in the AI?
I think there's a lot of concern around what technology could be doing from a sort of a psychosocial risk point of view. But I'm yet to see a scenario of that going really poorly in terms of using technology, and whether or not that's from a sort of a data point of view, whether or not it's about using like a language model to ask, using that to shape or ask questions to yourself around, challenging questions around, are we doing the right thing? And, I'm excited to see what novel approaches organizations come up with. And, my advice would be to go for it. I think, use the technology is a risk already. And it can be really negatively impacting if managed poorly, right? But don't use that as a reason not to engage at all, with the technology. How can we use that to, we're thinking about the smart work design model, right? Like how can we use technology to make sure that people are doing more engaging work and cutting out some of the more, say, administrative part of what they do, so we're increasing some of the resources that people have, when I say resources, I don't mean necessarily time in the day, but I mean the psychological resources to engage in work.
Yeah.
So, I'm really looking forward to seeing what organizations come up with from an integration of technology, AI, and psychological health to be meaningful.
And a solid work design.
Yes.
You know?
Very important.
Because that leaves me with a reflection point here that we are asking our people to be more resilient. But, if we have all of this, it just changes the narrative. And if we have solid work design, then we don't need, we need less resilience probably.
Yeah, that's right. There was such a focus. I say that in past tense, but it's still going really around the resilience of our people.
Yeah.
If we make them tougher, then they can withstand more in the workplace. People who know me know I love my fish tank analogy, which is if the water is dirty, it doesn't matter what kind of fish you put in there. It's
just about time.
Yeah.
It's just about time.
It's a matter of time. Yeah. It's a matter of time until they get sick. So let's clean the water. And that's a move away from the individual response or accountability. If I'm tougher, it's okay, to actually what conditions are we allowing and creating that result in either our people doing really well and thriving or struggling.
I love that analogy. It's beautiful. The fish tank analogy.
It gets a lot of airtime.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving on to our third segment, and it's a big one, and I'm sure your personal favorite as well, which focuses on investigations, right?
Yes.
A tough one, which probably no one wants to get into. But how do we shift that mindset from probably blame into more of a learning opportunity? And it's not easy, but when it comes from, if we were to talk about from a leadership lens perspective, how do we see it as, not just to allocate faults, but something to really do it right?
Yes. Because,
of course, there are laws, but it's also a sort of a responsibility, an obligation.
Yeah, there's a lot of missed opportunity in doing investigations well and taking learnings from every event that a workplace encounters. I think it's easier to say, yep, this person's done something wrong. We'll dismiss them and then we don't have to look at it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of failure to learn in that for me. And if I could only pick one, whether or not it's making sure that we exit someone from an organization or we learn from what happened and try to prevent the next event or scenario occurring, I know what I'm picking every time. Now, those things aren't mutually exclusive. They can coexist. Okay, we can have a system which, if someone behaves inappropriately, for example, that we either exit them from the business or make sure there's some sort of restriction, or we move them within our workplace. We don't need to necessarily change our response from that point of view, but what we do need to have happen is, okay, what failings were there within our organization that allowed, say, bullying to occur? And what are we going to change to make sure the next case doesn't happen? Or what are we going to change to make sure our response to, around supporting that individual is better? So that's the opportunity for well-designed investigations. It's not just, all right, someone's bullied someone.
Yeah.
Yep, that's bad. We'll get rid of them. It's okay. Well, why now? Why did this get to this point without it being escalated? What didn't we see that meant that this bullying went unnoticed for 6 months, that this person was in such dire straits by the time that we did intervene? We know that there's a kind of a relationship between poor work design and high job demands and poor leadership support and bullying occurring.
Yeah.
When people are more under the pump in that point of view, from that point of view, the bullying or poor, sort of any kind of poor behavioural component thrives. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to look at all of that.
And it's not only the role of the leaders here. I would also like to call out, it's also the HR leaders. It's also the, work health and safety teams, all sort of, playing a role together in it.
Yeah, there's, I know there's a lot of turf wars when it comes to the psychosocial risk or psychosocial safety space at the moment between areas like HR, employee relations, and the work health and safety team. Depending on the structure of the organisation, it could sit in a number of different places. I'm going to sound like probably a broken record, but they have to work together. Work together. Yeah. And
it's a perfect teamwork.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's cross-disciplinary.
Because there is a cost of silence in the organization.
Huge cost.
I mean, if we were to sort of convert it into a financial sort of implication, it's huge. It's massive.
Absolutely. Just looking at sort of turnover or absenteeism, right? The impact of someone leaving because there are poor conditions at work, needing to onboard recruit someone else, onboard them, get them up to speed for them to grow and develop and kind of fill the space that the previous person left. That's massive. That's a big business cost.
And what do you think, Alex? What could be that unconscious sort of a leadership personality style that would be causing some of these issues on the ground? Can we generalize it, or it's like, have you been able to sort of pick any sort of unconscious that they don't even know sometimes, given they have to be practical, they have to be commercially focused, they have to think about business first.
Yep.
Is there anything that they are missing out unconsciously?
I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is being avoidant.
Okay.
Not wanting to look and not wanting to invest
have the
in
tough
that
conversation.
Not wanting to have exactly. That's a good example. I think a lot of leaders are now. A common question would be, Alex, I don't want to performance manage someone because
even
I'm
seen
worried
the cases,
about.
Alex. So sometimes they would reach out to HR.
Yep.
That it's a redundancy rather than a performance management.
Yeah.
And then you have to probe them further whether it's a genuine redundancy or not. I'm sure you would have experienced that as well.
Oh yeah. People are like, I'd rather
get it
more
easy out of the way than really going through that process and having the tough conversation.
Yes. Not wanting to have the conversation early, not wanting to be clear about a change in expectations, responsibility, a drop in work quality early on. And people get to a point where they're like, I didn't realize I was doing a bad job. Yeah. And they're exited from a business, or they're put on kind of the last stage of a performance management plan instead of being engaged early and given the opportunity to improve and develop, because that's harder.
Yeah.
Well, it's perceived as harder.
Yeah.
I think if you do that well, it's not, but it's perceived as harder.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our last segment, which is, again, how do we really design? And probably we've also spoken about the smart work design model, but if you can usher some more light into how do we make sure that we are designing our work in such a way that it's creating a natural safety. You're not going out of the way in writing sort of policies and all of that, having a solid work design is far more effective, I would say, based on my personal experience being in HR and in transformation and change as well, than writing a new policy.
I have a love-hate relationship with policies.
Everyone has that. Not only you, Alex.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't think I'm alone there.
And that's why I said they don't deserve the attention
Yes.
that I do. They should deserve, because no one wants to go through the details of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to have a guide or something written that shapes your response when it comes to psychological health or psychosocial safety. What a policy is not is a control. I've sat in a lot of rooms where people are talking about the impact of psychosocial risk, and then we go on. The impact of psychosocial safety, and then we look at controls, and we think the first thing we should put up there is policy XYZ. The policy is not a control. What the policy may shape or enable people to do could be. So a policy around performance management, a policy around injury management, around the expectation to work design, and that could all be written in documentation, but that's not the control. The execution of the work that's in the policy is the control.
Absolutely.
So don't put a document as a control, because a document doesn't change anything.
And that's the biggest myth, right? We have a policy in place. We are safe. We
are
psychologically safe. We are psychosocial. We have a safety in place.
Yeah, doesn't work.
Doesn't
work. I'm not safer because I have a document formatted well that sits in a folder. That doesn't shape or change anything for me. What's in that document could. That's why I've got a love-hate relationship with policy and documentation. It's not to say that it's worthless or meaningless. I don't mean that, but the document does not control anything. It does not control the risk within the business. Not the psychosocial safety risk, at least. Maybe it controls legal risk, which is how it kind of creeps in, but. I think of an easy example would be injury management. Okay, we've got injury management policy around return to work, around the way that we want our leaders to support people coming back into the workplace, and fitness for work, and all of that. That doesn't control risk, but doing injury management. Our injury management process could be a control. So really separate kind of conceptually the document and what the document is there to create, and put what the work being done on the back of the policy as a control. It seems like semantics, but when you go to evaluating the effectiveness of your controls, and that's really important to understanding what your current risk profile is, that makes a big difference. Because if the policy is the control, you'll ask yourself questions like, do people know the policy? Is the policy put up on a wall for everyone to see?
Is there a poster for that?
Yeah, is there a poster for that?
But it's not only about posters. It's about the patterns on the ground, sort of,
It's the difference on the ground.
The behavioral sort of.
Yeah, it's what leaders are doing on the back of that. And that, when you have a poorly designed control around the terminology and about sort of quote unquote the semantics, you'll struggle to then evaluate that control, because you've actually worded it wrong.
Wonderfully explained. Thanks, Alex.
That's right.
And that also leaves me with a question that, can we have a high performance culture without psychological safety?
Ooh. First of all, and we haven't touched on this yet, I do want to separate or define psychological safety.
Go for it.
Psychological safety from a work health and safety lens, from the work health and safety, regulation, is not the same as the Amy Edmondson concept of being safe to speak up, and that's also called psychological safety. Great concept, but very different to really the responsibility of organizations to identify, assess, control, and monitor their risk when it comes to psychological health, which is also psychological safety, depending on the words you want to use, or it's psychological health and safety, or psychosocial safety, or psychosocial risk, or all
Words
of
that
those.
you want to
All of those
Yeah.
words. So an important distinction when it comes to high performance. I do fundamentally believe that better psychosocial risk management, better psychological safety from a work health and safety point of view is so important to being effective as an organisation, to being resilient as an organisation, not as a person, but as a business, because you're creating conditions for people to do their best work. And you're eliminating conditions that either countermand people doing their best work or actively harming people. And if you're under the pump, you're struggling to come into work every day, you're sitting in your car at the end of the workday and crying, I guarantee you're not doing your best work.
So there's no direct sort of a relation, right? Like between the high performance work culture and
you don't get more out of people by slamming them to the ground. And back to fish tank analogy, your fish tank is dirty. You are not getting the most out of your fish. You're not. You're just there's so much missed opportunity there. So don't think, okay, well, maybe we're not creating the best conditions, but we're getting the most out of people by driving a high performance culture. No. If you create the conditions for people to flourish and be safe and healthy, you will get more out of your people, guarantee it.
Is there anything more that you would like to talk about from a Australian law perspective, especially it's not a norm anymore, right? It's a law.
Yeah.
Anything more that you would like to talk about based on your experience, or any case study, any example that you'd like to talk?
Yeah, I think
through?
it's not a HR issue anymore. It's not something that you can delegate off and not put any attention or time into it as a business. The Work Health and Safety Act and accompanying regulation very clearly stipulates that you need your senior leaders involved in this process from a governance point of view, from a resource allocation point of view, but then you also need everyone involved from understanding what psychosocial safety or psychosocial risk is, from understanding what controls are in place, for understanding how to escalate escalate concerns and the rest of that. Everyone needs to be involved in that process, and it's clear in the regulation that people have a responsibility, everyone in the workplace, but especially senior leaders, directors, to
So what
understand
signals
that.
should they be watching out for early on? Are there any specific signals that they should be watching out? Anything?
I'd say there's a lot of things that they should be looking at, and not something that is a catch-all for we've got psychological harm in our workplace. Normally, your typical metrics like turnover, absenteeism, presenteeism are good proxies, if you like, for maybe something's not right, and that tells you enough. That gives you an idea enough of okay, maybe we should look closer. And if there's some specificity to that helps. Okay, we have a certain area where we're seeing that turnover, absenteeism, presenteeism, etc. Let's have a look. Let's dive, more deeply into that. Let's look at some focus groups. Let's look at a survey or whatever it might be around assessing the potential harm there, and then use that to guide our decisions. So that's kind of like an early warning sign.
Yeah.
If you want something perhaps as a I don't want to say easy, but good bang for buck in terms of understanding the risk, or potential risk within your organisation, I'd recommend looking at the psychosocial safety climate survey or items, which is just a sort of short 4 items that you can use. You could put it in your engagement survey if you like, although there is some there can be some issues there. But however you want to sort of integrate it within within your business to get good participation and response, and that's around like leadership commitment and organizational commitment, I suppose, when it comes to managing psychological health. And there's some really good research out of the University of South Australia on the efficacy of that four item
What are those 4 items? Would love to know that.
Yeah, well, if you just Google it, I think it's free to access. Free to access that one. So that's a nice way to get a bit of an understanding.
Get your head around.
Yeah, really low. It's not invasive. It's not invasive for your business to ask, and there's some good evidence around both the impact on. If you've got poor psychosocial safety climate, on the impact to your business and a bottom line dollar kind of cost, right? So it should appeal to everyone. So that's a good way to have a look. Yep. But then you need to, if you've got, say, poor psychosocial safety climate, then you need to go and have a deeper look. Then you need to ask yourself the what. But it guides where you should prioritize, which is very valuable, because otherwise it seems like a really big problem that you've got. Gosh, psychosocial safety, it's all encompassing. Okay, well, how about if we ask something small like this? We can then look at specific teams or areas within our business where we think there might be a problem.
Pocket of population where you need to sort of focus upon more.
Yeah,
absolutely. So with that, Alex, we move into our favorite section, which is some of the myths and hacks. And it's a rapid fire. So very quickly, I'll ask you, psychological safety is a soft sort of an issue to deal with than the physical safety?
I think organisations that are still treating psychological health and safety as a soft issue are behind. There's $70,000 on average as a median cost for severe mental health cases at work. If you think that your organisation doesn't have any sort of problem and you're seeing cases like that, then you're missing out. You're missing out.
Absolutely. And any hack that you would like to share with our audience?
I think what we talked about before, which is a policy is not a control.
Yeah.
That a well-designed investigation and looking at the root causes and not assigning blame as a first sort of a first action will save you a lot of harm down the line, because you'll prevent the next cases. And looking at your smart work design as a priority. Those are my recommendations.
Absolutely. And with that, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Stories with Anjali. It was an absolute pleasure having you. And until then, keep sipping and keep sharing, because some of the best stories are the ones that really help you think differently. Thank you.
Thanks.